Talk, music, get it all.
24 hours.
On West Africa Democracy Radio. 94.9 FM Dakar.
WADR, promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar, 1 p.m. in Lagos. Good afternoon and welcome to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio 94.9 FM and online at wadr.org. First, the top stories. Niger and Benin advance high-level bilateral talks over reopening shared borders.
We think
that this aims to guarantee and establish the reopening of borders, but also to address the issue of national security.
World Vision warns of rising humanitarian needs as thousands of Burkinabe seek asylum in Ghana. Guinean President Doumbouya bans export of gold from the country, threatens legal action against violators.
Guinean gold will be melted in Guinea, certified in Guinea, valued in Guinea before exporting it to international markets.
Senegalese President Diomaye Faye arrives in Germany on a working visit to deepen bilateral ties. Please stay with us for details of these stories and more.
On the news, this is Augustine Bill Coley.
Thank you for being with us. We begin with 4 major diplomatic putsch in the sub-region. Niger and Benin are continuing high-level discussions aimed at reopening their shared border. Joint expert committees established following the recent visit of Benin's new president, Wadr, to Niamey, convened over the weekend in Cotonou. While officials note that discussions are progressing, Nigerian authorities have firmly outlined specific conditions that must be fulfilled before trade and movement can fully resume. Deborah Moore reports the details.
The meeting of the Joint Expert Committees was chaired by Niger's Minister of Security, General Mohamed Toumba, and Benin's Minister of African Integration, Alhaji Bakari. Experts from both countries discussed several issues related to the reopening of the border, including security and defense, diplomacy, and economic cooperation. Niamey says it is in favor of reopening its border with Benin, but has set 2 key conditions. First, Niger wants a defense and security agreement based on the principle of non-aggression. Secondly, it is demanding full transparency regarding the presence and activities of foreign military forces operating near the border areas. According to international relations analyst Labo Yakuba, this firm stance by Niamey could be interpreted as an assertion of national sovereignty.
We think
that this aims to guarantee and establish the reopening of borders, not just as a strictly economic or diplomatic matter, but also to address the issue of national security. In any case, they demonstrate a posture of firmness and mistrust towards external influences.
The analyst further noted that Cotonou's response will likely depend on its own national interests and the security agreements it has signed with other countries.
Benin also has international commitments and diplomatic commitments with other countries. I think that at this level, Benin will weigh, in any case, the interest it has with Niger and the interest it has with foreign forces. I think that it is strictly a diplomatic matter.
Beyond the border issue, Niger and Benin also intend to revive their Joint Cooperation Commission. Both countries have pledged to strengthen cooperation in the fight against terrorism and banditry, which continue to affect several areas across the West African sub-region.
A report from the Niamey correspondent Yakuba Habibulai, presented by Deborah Amour. In Guinea, the authorities now prohibit the export of raw gold. President Mamadi Doumbouya requires that Guinean gold now be refined, certified and valued in Guinea before being placed on the world market. Companies that do not comply with this decision risk legal action or the withdrawal of their operating licenses. According to the authorities, this measure is intended to strengthen the Guinean economy and create more jobs in the mining sector. Imo Edit completes the story.
Gold mining companies are now mandated to melt their gold in Guinea before it is placed on the market. This decision was taken by the Guinean authority in April 2022, requiring mining companies to build refineries in Guinea for the processing of bauxite on site. The measure was reinforced during a high-level meeting at the weekend, which remains irreversible for President Mamadi Doumbouya.
Guinea will no longer continue to be content with being a supplier of raw materials to factories around the world. Guinean gold will be melted in Guinea, certified in Guinea, valued in Guinea before exporting it to international markets. Any operator who continues to export raw gold will have their approval suspended, will answer for its actions before the Guinean justice system without exception.
According to Guinean authorities, this decision is intended to boost the national economy and create more jobs for young citizens. Guinean economist Abdurrahman Belabe gives his opinion on this decision by the authorities.
It is always a very good decision to implement a policy regarding the local processing of raw materials. It will be something very interesting for the Guinean economy. But beyond that, gold is a safe haven. There will be real added value in the Guinean economy, and that will even see the stabilization of our currency.
Gold is one of the most exploited mineral resources in Guinea. Since January 2026, the country has exported 1,796 kilograms of gold, almost 1.8 tons. For several observers, this new measure has little chance of success because these gold companies already have refineries built abroad, which they supply with gold extracted in Guinea.
A report from Channel Alpha Ibrahim Mbalde in Conakry, voiced by Imo Edit. Senegalese President Bassirou Diomaye Faye is in Berlin, Germany for a high-profile visit. He arrived in the country on Sunday. The diplomatic mission, which runs until Tuesday, is specifically aimed at strengthening strategic cooperation and attracting fresh industrial investments to Dakar across several key economic sectors. Abdullahi Hassan gives the details.
According to a statement from the Senegalese presidency, President Bassirou Diomaye Faye's visit is intended to consolidate the strategic partnership between Senegal and Germany. During the trip, the Senegalese leader is expected to promote investment opportunities in Senegal to German businesses and investors with the goal of fostering new partnerships and collaborations. The visit is also expected to deepen political dialogue between the two countries and reaffirm their shared commitment to developing mutually beneficial cooperation. President Diomaye Faye is scheduled to hold working sessions with German Chancellor. Discussions are expected to focus on economic cooperation, productive investments, energy transition, vocational training, and Senegal's industrialization prospects. Germany, the largest economy in the European Union, remains one of Senegal's most influential partners. For several decades, Berlin has supported Senegal's public policies through financial and technical cooperation programs. The visit therefore comes at a time when Senegalese authorities are seeking to mobilize additional resources and partnerships to support the ambitions of Senegal's Vision 2050, the country's long-term national development framework.
Abdullahi Hassan Fight, that report. Meanwhile, Senegalese members of parliament are meeting in plenary session this Monday to examine two key pieces of legislation as part of the country's social and legal framework. Parliamentarians are expected to vote on draft law number 15, 2026 concerning the labor code, as well as the draft law number 16, 2026 relating to the social security code. These two reforms are expected to modernize and further regulate labor relations and the social protection system. In addition to the legislative review, the agenda also includes the election of the first and third vice presidents of the National Assembly, a step that is part of the internal functioning of the parliamentary institution.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Now on to humanitarian issues. The world marked International Refugee Day on Saturday, June 20, with attention turning to the worsening displacement crisis across the Sahel, where millions have been forced from their homes by armed conflict, insecurity, and the impacts of climate change. Humanitarian agencies say the number of displaced people in the region continues to rise, placing increasing pressure on both affected communities and host populations. In response, aid organizations are stepping up efforts to provide emergency assistance and long-term support. Charles Bacom, Regional Director of Emergency Humanitarian Affairs and External Affairs for World Vision in West Africa, explains the details of assistance to refugees in the region.
Les besoins les plus urgents, c'est d'abord la sécurité alimentaire.
The most urgent needs are first and foremost food security, because approximately 3 million people in Chad, for example, are projected to be in dire need of food security between June and August 2026, especially during the lean season. There are also shelter needs because there are over 71 million refugees and families in eastern Chad facing this need. The third element is protection and access to services, because with reduced funding, registration centers have been cut back. There is the issue of health, access to water, hygiene and sanitation. And there is also child protection, because population displacement inevitably leads to problems of child protection.
Charles Bacom is the Regional Director of Emergency Humanitarian Affairs and External Affairs for World Vision in West Africa. Details of his explanations will come up during the guest interview. Meanwhile, World Vision reveals that more than 10,000 Burkinabe asylum seekers have sought refuge in Ghana, driven from their homes by a mix of violent extremism and severe climate-related shocks. The organization is now raising the alarm, urging international partners to provide sustained emergency support for both the displaced populations and the struggling host communities in northern Ghana. Nadia Tete reports.
Speaking at a stakeholder engagement in Bolgatanga to mark World Refugee Day 2026, World Vision Ghana Strategy and Integrated Programs Director Joshua Roland Beidou said the worsening crisis in Burkina Faso and the wider Sahel region continued to force thousands of people across Ghana's northern border in search of safety. He noted that the asylum seekers were being hosted in communities including Tarikum, Zini, Felmo, Bansi, and Isa Katinga, and stressed that children remained among the most vulnerable among displaced populations. According to him, many refugee children face disrupted education, psychological trauma, and increased risks of abuse and exploitation. Mr. Beidou explained that World Vision Ghana, through its border project and in partnership with the Ghana Refugee Board, was supporting refugee hosting communities in the Upper East and Upper West regions. He said the initiative focused on protection, livelihood, and social cohesion to ensure both refugees and host communities benefited from humanitarian assistance. Mr. Beidou called on government, development partners, and donors to maintain long-term support for refugees, arguing that efforts should move beyond emergency relief towards sustainable protection, integration, and peaceful coexistence. Meanwhile, the Upper East Regional Coordinator of the Ghana Refugee Board, Sika Agbeshi, reported that more than 5,500 refugees had been registered in the region, with over 2,300 relocated to the Tarikom refugee camp, where humanitarian assistance are being provided. He appealed for increased support, particularly skills training programs, to help refugees secure sustainable livelihoods and integrate into their host communities. Local authorities have also commended humanitarian organizations and development partners for complementing government efforts in addressing the growing refugee situation in northern Ghana. For WADR, Nadidi Tete, Accra.
In north-central Nigeria, residents of flood-prone communities in Kogi State are once again counting their losses as the annual rainy season intensifies across the nation. With submerged homes and completely disrupted livelihoods, frustrated locals are calling on the federal government to move past temporary relief materials and finally address the root causes of the recurring disaster. Our Abuja correspondent Yeche Nusasetu tells us more.
For many residents of Kogi State, the rainy season brings anxiety rather than relief. Communities located along major waterways continue to experience flooding, with rising water levels threatening homes, businesses, and farmland.
This is our house. We cannot move to anywhere because we don't have the money.
We usually pack out during rain like this. By September, I don't think we can be here.
And I'll go and give us primary school. We stay there, look at mosquito, all those why.
Appreciative government will come into our aid to look into the situation.
Authorities in Kogi State say efforts are underway to mitigate the impacts of flooding and support affected residents. Mukhtar Atima is the executive secretary of the Kogi State Emergency Management Agency.
We have taken the campaign to the people and we started designing routes in which, when necessary, people should be able to evacuate. We are not going to be found napping. With our emergency preparedness plan, we are good to go.
As concerns grow, climate activist Rachel Akande says Nigeria must move beyond emergency responses and invest in long-term climate adaptation measures.
Bringing them out to a shelter for a temporary thing is not really helping any matter. Yes, government can actually, look for investors. Hyperdeck is also doing something around Basa that they are building about, 50 unit, 2-bedroom flat for residents of Basa. That is one of the ways to support the flood victim, not taking them out temporarily and, bringing them back. So government has the capacity to attract investors.
While emergency interventions may provide temporary relief, residents insist that sustainable drainage systems, flood control infrastructure, and better environmental management are needed to prevent future disasters. For WADR, Yechenu Sasetu in Abuja.
You are listening to Newslink on West Africa, Democracy Radio 94.9 FM and online at wadr.org. Here is a reminder of our top stories. Niger and Benin advance high-level bilateral talks over reopening shared borders. World Vision warns of rising humanitarian needs as thousands of Burkinabe seek asylum in Ghana. Guinean President Doumbouya bans export of unprocessed gold from the country, threatens legal action against violators. Senegalese President Diomaye Faye arrives in Germany on a working visit to deepen bilateral ties. Still ahead in the news, we have a press review, guest interview, and the sports news. Please stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
Thank you for staying with us. Let's take you to Liberia, where long-standing land crisis has resurfaced as the country's land authority moves to fight against widespread property fraud and overlapping claims. This urgency has been amplified by a high-profile ownership dispute between a member of parliament, Representative Samuel Enders, and a private businessman. The situation is reigniting public debate over the vulnerability of the country's land administration system.
This is the newspaper review. Stay abreast and find out what the top stories are in your country.
This is the newspaper review.
The newspaper review.
Well, let's return to Abuja, Nigeria for the press review of Yechenu Sasetu.
Greetings, and we begin from Vanguard. Oyo school kidnap. Troops block escape routes as terrorists reduce demands. According to security sources, the terrorists have been effectively contained within the forest, with security operatives blocking possible escape routes and restricting their movement with the hostages. No fewer than 19 persons reportedly killed and several others injured following an attack on Kawel village in Musheril district of Bukos local government area of Plateau State. And more on insecurity, Bauchi governor inaugurates 2,187 forest guards. Let's take a look at the nation. Security tops Senate's emergency session agenda Tuesday. According to Senate spokesman Yemi Adaramudu, substantial part of Tuesday's emergency session will be devoted to deliberations on the worsening security situations across the land. Now, The Guardian. Islamic cleric Sheikh Ahmed Gumi has criticized the federal government's classification of bandits as terrorists, warning that the move could escalate insecurity and eliminate opportunities for dialogue within the groups. And lastly, in Punch, Secure Nigeria, protect citizens. Criminologist urges Tinubu. President of the Nigerian Society for Criminology, Professor Oludayo Tade, on Sunday tasked President Bola Tinubu to intensify efforts towards securing Nigeria and protecting Nigerians. And that's it on Press Review. Back to you in the studio.
Yechenu Sasetu with the Press Review from Abuja.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is The Guest.
As we told you earlier, the guest interview now focuses on the growing displacement crisis in West Africa and the Sahel. And this was a situation highly discussed during the commemoration of World Refugee Day on Saturday, June 20, 2026, to discuss the challenges facing displaced populations and the humanitarian response. We are joined by Charles Bacom, Regional Director of Emergency Humanitarian Affairs and External Activities for World Vision in West Africa.
Selon le HCR, les projections montrent que d'ici fin de l'année...
According to UNHCR, projections show that by the end of the fiscal year, more than 5 million displaced persons or asylum seekers will be identified across the region. Within this group, we have over 1 million refugees and asylum seekers. What is truly challenging is that this is all driven by the fact that there is a 17% increase in refugees and asylum seekers and a 16% increase in internally displaced persons. But a third of this population is actually in Burkina Faso. Let me give you an example. Chad alone hosts more than 2.2 million people forcibly displaced, including over 1 million refugees, primarily from Sudan, the Central African Republic, and Cameroon.
Venant principalement du Soudan, de la Centrafrique et du Cameroun.
So what are the most urgent needs of refugees and host communities in the Sahel?
Les besoins les plus urgents, c'est d'abord la sécurité alimentaire.
The most urgent needs are first and foremost food security, because approximately 3 million people in Chad, for example, are projected to be in dire need of food security between June and August 2026, especially during the lean season. There are also shelter needs because there are over 71 million refugees and families in eastern Chad facing this need. The third element is protection and access to services, because with reduced funding, registration centers have been cut back. There is the issue of health, access to water, hygiene and sanitation. And there is also child protection, because population displacement inevitably leads to problems of child protection.
You are in Bamako, the Malian capital. Can you share some of the main interventions by World Vision in addressing these problems?
Oui, ce que nous faisons principalement, c'est l'appui en cash.
Yes, what we primarily do is provide cash and voucher support to enable vulnerable groups facing difficult situations to access food, water, hygiene and sanitation by drilling boreholes, rehabilitating wells and building latrines for displaced people. We focus on livelihoods to help these populations earn an income, and we also provide child protection and education activities to enable children to move around, stay in school, and avoid the negative effects of child marriage. We also carry out health and nutrition activities to support mothers and their children in particular. But we also do a lot of advocacy work, and we do this with other stakeholders to draw donors' attention to the difficult situation faced by displaced populations and refugees.
The drying up of funding is affecting humanitarian operations worldwide. How does this impact World Vision's work in the Sahel?
Yes, this has a strong impact on us, and with the reduction of these funds, we are forced to reduce the scope of intervention. We are forced to reduce the number of beneficiaries. We are forced to choose the activities, but also the populations that will be more in need, and this forces us to leave some vulnerable populations behind.
Charles Bacom is the Regional Director of Emergency Humanitarian Affairs and External Activities for World Vision in West Africa. And of course, it's time for sports. We have Sankule Janko right here in studio. Sankule, let's begin with the FIFA World Cup. Spain have registered their first win, and that's so amazing, coming from a former champion, and their first victory of the tournament is emphatically of fashion. How important was this win for the La Roja, and who were the standout performers in their 4-0 victory over Saudi Arabia?
Well, like you rightly said, Spain secured their first win of the 2026 FIFA World Cup campaign with a convincing 4-0 victory over Saudi Arabia in Atalanta. August, the teenage star Lamine Yamal opened the scoring before Mikel Oyarzabal struck twice in quick succession. Saudi's own goal, of course, early in the second half, sealed the win for the La Roja. The result now sends Spain to the top of Group H with 4 points and strengthened their hopes for reaching the round of 32.
Well, still in Group H, one of the tournament surprise packages continues to impress. That is Cape Verde, and they've kept their World Cup dream alive so far. Tell us more about their latest result and what it means for their qualification.
Of course, indeed, Augustine. Cape Verde continued their impressive World Cup campaign with a 2-2 draw against Uruguay in Group H. Well, Kevin Pina and Helo Varela scored for the Blue Sharks, who followed up their opening draw against Spain, as you're aware, with another strong performance against the two-time world champions. Well, the result leaves Cape Verde on 2 points from 2 matches and firmly in contention for the historic place in the knockout stage ahead of their final group game against Saudi Arabia. Elsewhere, Iran boosted their qualification hopes by holding Belgium to a goalless draw in Group G also, and goalkeeper Renza Benran starred for the Iranians. Belgium failed to break through despite dominating the possession.
There was also a historic moment for African football, and Egypt finally secured their first ever World Cup victory.
Indeed, Egypt made history on Monday, of course, early hours of Monday today, by recording their first ever FIFA World Cup win, defeating New Zealand 3-1 in Vancouver. After falling behind early, the Pharaohs fought back through goals from Mustafa Zico, Mohamed Salah and Trezeguet to secure a memorable victory. The result now moves Egypt to the top of Group G with 4 points and, strengthening their hopes of reaching the knockout stage.
Well, looking ahead, what are the exciting fixtures for today?
Well, in the fixtures today, Augustine, Argentina will take on Australia at 7 p.m, while France will take on Iraq at 9 p.m. But Senegal will hope to bounce back from their disappointing 3-1 defeat to France with a take on Norway at midnight tonight.
Before talking about the Teranga Lions, let me take you back to Cote d'Ivoire's performance on Saturday or so. Against Germany. What do you make of that?
It was heartbreaking for me. It was a very heartbreaking moment for every African, I would say, because the victory, the results did not, reflect, the performance of the Elephants. They had a very good football game. They were so impressive. But sadly, just like Senegal against France, at this stage of football, the World Cup, if you don't take your chances, you live to regret. And that's what happened to Cote d'Ivoire. They had plenty of chances they failed to take. And then Undaf, who is doing amazingly well in the German Bundesliga, showed his quality. He came from the bench, equalized for Germany, and then scored the winner in the dying minutes of the additional time. It was heartbreaking for the Cote d'Ivoire. Say that again?
Do they still have the opportunity?
Cote d'Ivoire? Oh, yes, of course, they do still have an opportunity. Because victory against Curaçao means, they'll secure qualification. So I'm hopeful that Cote d'Ivoire will still make it.
Okay, crucial one for the Teranga Lions. Just conclude on this one. Sadio Mane against Haaland.
Well, I would say Haaland versus either Kalidou Koulibaly or Modou Sarr, because that's the defense, or Musa Nyakite. These are some of the
trying to look at the two
stars. Yes, because they are the main man for their respective teams. Well, that's true. Okay, it's fair to say that Sadio Mane versus Haaland, and I'm hopeful that Sadio Mane will come to, because Senegal they can't afford to lose today, by all means, because losing means we are packing our bags back home.
Thank you, Sankuli, for the sports. And that brings us to the end of this edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio 94.9 FM, Dakar, Senegal, and online at wadr.org. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Ismail Kamara and Joacino Capa Gomes for the technical support. I am Augustine Curley. Good afternoon.
We thank you for listening to Newslink in Nigeria on Love FM Abuja and Darling FM Owerri. In the Gambia on Hot FM Banjul, Hilltop FM and Veritas Radio in Serekunda. Thank you for listening on Alternative Youth Radio Lofa County, Liberia, Radio Kegaman in Nimba County, and DCN Radio Riverses County. A big thank you to Radio Graft FM in Sierra Leone for listening, and in Ghana we thank Radio Pad in Damango and Royals FM in Wenchi. Thank you all for